President Trump has said an enormous military armada is en route for Iran. In fact, there are already 10 warships there, the main one being the USS Abraham Lincoln and its accompanying guided missile destroyers, of which there are 3. I have no doubt that there is probably a nuclear-powered submarine in the area as well, perhaps 1 or 2, and a number of other air assets are currently flying towards the region. I'm Chris Hughes, Defence and Security Editor of the Daily Mirror, and today I'm going to be discussing the latest developments in the Iran crisis. So what we're seeing is an immense US naval military buildup of Iran, which indicates that the intention is there to launch an attack at some stage. We don't know whether that will happen. We know that there are back-channel talks taking place all the time, even though Iran has gone a little bit quiet. There are Twitter exclamations by both sides, but ultimately all of that will go away if an attack gets underway. Well, currently, the USS Abraham Lincoln is in the area of Iran, possibly off the coast of Oman, we're not sure, with its accompanying escort of 3 destroyers. They are Arleigh-class guided missile destroyers, the USS Frankie Peterson, the Spruance, and the Michael Murphy. So these are guided missile destroyers. Another missile destroyer is in the area, having arrived in the past 24 hours, passing through the Suez Canal. That's the USS Delbert D Black, which again is another guided missile destroyer. By the end of today, there will probably be about 10 very, very key US warships in the region. So this is a significant buildup. When you bear in mind that just the strike force alone, moving it costs about £6 million a day. On its way currently are 4 Pegasus air fuel tankers, which have taken off from their base called Pease Air National Guard Base in New Hampshire in America. And with that formation are 6 EA-18G Growler electronic warfare planes. Now, there are Growler warplanes on USS Abraham Lincoln, but the significance of their arrival will be that the US is obviously taking precautions because they are specialists in jamming their electronic warfare. So that these are the planes that would, some hours before an operation, try to jam the radar of the Iranian defenses, which is quite sophisticated. So perhaps we can read into that 2 things. The American forces perhaps don't feel they're ready yet, and also they assess that they need extra electronic warfare planes, so the defenses may be more significant than they had previously thought. Or this is just part of the general build-up. So that's the latest. On the USS Abraham Lincoln, they have, I think it's about 110 warplanes. The kind of spearhead end of that offensive suite would be the F-35C stealth fighters, similar to British F-35Bs, but they have longer range because they take off conventionally and land conventionally. So they don't expend an awful lot of fuel taking off and then landing like helicopters like our ones do. They would probably go in first as what's called the first knock attack planes, because they're very tough to pick up, and they would be followed by the Super Hornet F/A-18s, which are also on USS Abraham Lincoln. So as well as having guided missiles, the 3 destroyers that are accompanying Lincoln, their most important job is to protect the Lincoln from submarine or air attack or whatever attack comes. We know that Iran, off Iran, it has parked I forget the name of it, but it's a warship that is a specialist in carrying drones. And one of the biggest fears for the US carrier force would be Iran perhaps sending in a swarm of drones, which would be immensely difficult to counter. The significance of the build-up is that it looks like the attack would possibly take place from the sea, and America will already have mapped out and already have targets in mind. What it has to have, I think, is a way of escalating. So it'll have I guess you could call it a library of targets. Now, the most basics of targets will be wiping out the 4 or 5 nuclear targets, which may still have enriched uranium. You remember that in June, America launched a huge attack with bunker busters and all sorts of huge bombs. Intelligence reports and assessments afterwards suggested that there was a significant amount of enriched uranium remaining. So Trump's claims that the attack was incredibly conclusive were apparently false. And of course, as the flip-flopping president, he's now going back to threatening Iran regarding its nuclear ambitions, having stated weeks ago that the threat was really to counter attempts by the regime to execute hundreds of protesters. That's what this current crisis was meant to be all about. It wasn't to go back to the nuclear thing. So which is it? You know, we still don't know. Perhaps it's both. So that's what looks like it's underway. There are many scenarios which the Americans will have war gamed already, but the crucial one I would say, if you compare it to Iraq, which was perhaps less of a task, toppling Saddam Hussein was the main task, regime change, and he was caught by Christmas, the attack having started before summer. But then the problem the Americans had then was that they dismantled the entire security system of Iraq. They de-Ba'ath partied it. It was called the de-Baathification process. You had an awful lot of middle class and lower class people who had comfortable lives, military security people, who buried the guns, went into the hills and decided to launch an insurgency, the aftermath of which we still suffer in the form of eventually what was spawned, which was Islamic State from Al-Qaeda. There are lots and lots of different scenarios, but it would seem that the emphasis is now switched from the nuclear facilities, which are not an immediate threat, and the CIA no doubt will be briefing Trump that is the case. Perhaps regime change would mean toppling the entire regime, which means that all of those figureheads, the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, their whereabouts needs to be known. Now, apparently, we're told he may be hiding beneath Tehran or outside Tehran in a tunnel network in various bunkers. So that's got to be pinned down. All the IRGC leaders, the training sites, the main headquarters of the IRGC. This is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which many of whom are zealots. Their entire existence is based upon spreading Iranian hegemony throughout the Middle East and well beyond, and they've done it, despite the fact that Israel has now removed much of the threat from the proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, all the Iraqi militia that are pro-Iranian. These networks still have contacts abroad, as far as South America, even across Europe. So the next stage of concern about what happens afterwards, perhaps months into toppling a regime, would be what happens to those networks. Unless you have them on board, these people are very, very capable of launching an insurgency within Iran and exporting terrorism, which they've already been doing for years. So you can see that this would present a huge problem for counter-terror units across the West, and Britain would be a target, I believe, because we are the junior partner of the US.